Hi, welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Fiesta Marigold Monkeyflower Go Out and Sketch instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to sketch the Fiesta Marigold Monkeyflower by using what you learned in your step-by-step lesson. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you go out to sketch. Head out to sketch at a garden, park, your backyard, or even your kitchen table, whatever works best for you. Today, I'm sketching this live plant I purchased at a local garden. Remember, this is just a sketch. Relax, observe, enjoy your time with nature, have fun, and don't get too caught up with the details. So, when sketching this, you'll be applying what you learned from your step-by-step lesson, the colors, the shape. You've already done this before, and now you're just gonna do it again. And so first kind of think about what you want to include on your page. And do I want to include all of these flowers? Do I want to include this entire stem? Do I want to include the buds? No, and I'll include a lot of that. So no matter how you start, you'll want to use very light marks initially. And I think a really easy way to get this onto your page is to kind of trace it. I think I'm going to shorten this a lot. I think I want to include this part here. So maybe I'll start that at the tip and just really lightly draw some lines to kind of indicate where everything's at. So it gives me a little bit of a placement that's kind of like transferring your drawing onto your page. It gives me a little bit of an idea. And then I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to cut this whole middle part out and just go over here, and maybe I'll include that tiny little beetle on this plant right here. It's kind of cute. But for now, I'm just going to skip down to here. So I'll remember that I'm only drawing this top part of the plant, and I'm skipping all the way down to this bud. So then I have another leaf coming out, a bud, another leaf, and then this bud. And just making, as you can see, I'm just making some marks to indicate where things are so that I can draw it and know where it is and not have to worry about it being too big or too small for the page. You could also take some time tracing everything if you want. And then I'm going to skip, I'll probably just do this flower and this flower, although I like this one a lot better. So maybe I'll replace this one with this one. You don't have to do anything quite this complicated. This one comes out here, and then frills. So just a real rough idea of it. And then this, I'm going to do this flower instead. I'm going to draw a circle for where it's going to go. So that gives you an idea of how it's just a nice long sketchy stem, and with really rough sketch, just showing where the basic pieces are lying so it's not too big for the page. So now I'm going to start drawing in some of the shapes for the petals and the flower and such. So I know I want this flower to be here. I'm going to start just drawing in some basic shapes. So I'm drawing a little circular kind of shape for the center, and then I'll start drawing in these petals. But I'm still using really light sketching marks because my sizing might be wrong in relation to everything else still. And I'm not going to put in too many details, I can add those in a minute. And then you don't want to get too carried away because you might be changing the size of that flower. So don't add too many details yet. I'm trying to determine how many leaves I want to add, and if I want to add this little bud in the bottom here. I think I do. I think I will go ahead and add that. It's kind of interesting. And maybe a leaf back here, and this other leaf going back here. Again, I'm just drawing in kind of oval shapes for those leaves and the bud. And then we have this other flower here, which end up stemming up. Again, so this is a sketch, it's a representation, so it won't be exactly the same. I cut off several flowers to make it fit what I wanted to sketch today. To remember, I was going to sketch this these top buds, and I think I might add those in next. And you might have to change your position in order to get things just right. And let's see. I said don't get too caught up with details, just a quick sketch. Quick representation of this plant and its plant parts. And it's a little bit more complicated because I'm kind of stitching different parts together. I have this little bud in this flower, and I start drawing in those stems. So a leaf here, and I believe it will go kind of like this. Again, I'm using pretty light marks because I'm still figuring out. So I ended up changing the position of this flower completely. And that's fine, you can change your mind. That's why I used really light marks, and I'm just going to leave those marks because they're kind of fun to have in there. Showing my thought process a little bit in this sketch. And if you need to, at any time, you can pick the paper back up and retrace the flower, whatever you need to do. It might make it a little easier for you to get the right size for this flower on there. I'm just going to quickly freehand this because I have quite a good amount of experience in sketching. And I don't need a lot to base on. And I'm also not too terribly concerned about getting it exactly right. I just want to get this in a quick, timely manner. And so I put this flower in because I wanted to make sure that it didn't overlap with this other bud. So let's see. This other bud coming out. And like I said, you can make things up a little bit because this is a sketch. And I'm going to be redrawing a lot of these parts again, I can just tell. But that's why I started with a very light drawing rather than dark lines. And that's why I haven't added a lot of the details yet. So I decided to add quite a few parts here. I'm going to add this little beetle because it's cute. And I can't forget that I took this whole part out. So I started to draw this just kind of going up the plant with my eye. But I need to make sure to take this part out and just go ahead and start with this. So I have the leaf coming out. Again, keeping it really light. Then a little bud. And a little bud. And then forward-facing leaf. It's kind of a strange angle there. And then leaves on the side, and it ended up being a little shorter, so that's good because I didn't have too much space on this page. I'm going to cut out more of the stem than I thought when I was going back up. That is just fine, because I think that the sizing works here. Here, and as I said before, I'm not too terribly worried about exact position, exact size, and so I like the basic layout of that sketch. So now I'll go ahead and go through and start adding some details throughout, and I think I'm going to start at the top this time. So I'll start defining those with some slightly darker marks. And so I'll start adding in some serrated edges, but not worrying. I'm not going to go through and count how many serrations there are or make sure they're located exactly right. I'm just going to add some serrated edges. And a few leaves, so I'm not going to make sure it's exact. Again, this is a representation of this plant. Not an exact of this plant, so don't worry too much about getting all of that stuff in. But as you can see, I'm using some darker marks. Kind of say, hey, these are the drawing marks. This is what we're actually having in our image. And you don't need to erase the other marks. They'll be hidden by the watercolor. And they also just kind of add a little more fun character and style to your drawing and your painting. And it's not exact size, just a sketch, just a representation. And just like with our step-by-step, we think you may have made a mistake. Don't worry about it, that's going to be the new mark, that's what it is. We're not going to go backwards, we're just going to get a quick representation of this plant. Nature and or our lives don't always give us the time to spend hours and hours and hours sketching. If you have a lot of time to sketch and you can sit out there for a long time and really develop this, that's great, but it's good to also be able to do it quickly. And to apply the skills you're developing to create a quick sketch. It's very relaxing just to sit out and take your time sketching too. So if you have the time, go ahead and take it, relax, and just sketch for a really long time if you have it. It's hard to find in this busy, busy world. So again, I drew this top part here, and I'm going to skip right back down to this stem, linking these buds with this cute, tiny, tiny, tiny little beetle on there. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's just a tiny brown little speck. Start adding in Let's start with the stem and adding in this little flower and bud here. This leaf. Again, not worrying too much about being exact. The best way to get this bud in is to add the center in first where it's red, and then add in the other parts. So it's good to find something central to base your image on. It can still change a little bit. So I have that bud in. Then before I add this leaf, I'm going to go ahead and add this second bud. Although this could easily do without that bud. And I may just completely leave it out. And I think I will. I think I'll leave this drawing back here. But I'm going to just add this leaf and forget about this bud here. I think it's making this image a little too busy. Clear it up a little bit, but just simplifying it. And I will go ahead and add in this leaf, and it's in a strange angle, so I'm going to add a little triangle first. And then a circle, kind of an oval, elongating it towards the back. To get that shape. Now I can see how that all comes together on the stem. And now I can go ahead and draw this flower here, and I'll start adding in some details. So as I'm drawing the petals, I'm going to add some frilling to the edges and pay attention to the direction of each petal and add the shape in a little bit. I'm not getting too carried away with getting it exactly right, but trying to add some of that in there. And I can also start adding in these anthers and the stigma. It's kind of strange, this is the same plant that I got the flowers off of for my reference image. I used it, but this one doesn't have any speckling inside like the other one did. On this orange area. And that's something, if you notice differences in your plant, you can add a mark here, say no speckles, but wasn't step by step if you wanted to. This is, your sketch is your observation, it's your journal. You can go ahead and ask different questions and write in what you think about everything. Such as, what did you notice, like this little bug? What did you notice while you were doing this? What parts of this did you notice with spots? How did drawing this make you feel, painting it? How did sitting outside? Hopefully you're sitting outside, unlike me, and you're doing this painting. Maybe you're asking why this plant is growing where it's growing. This is a native plant, so maybe talk about that. It's a native hybrid plant, so you probably won't find it out in a hiking trail, but you'll find it in gardens. So you can just add in whatever kind of thoughts or observations you have while you're drawing this and any of these white spaces. It's really your journal. You're in your little time with this plant and nature. What did you learn about it or yourself while you were out painting? Got this flower all drawn in. I felt like I liked the basic size. As you see, I started with a circle, then a rough light line sketch of each petal, and I also added a shape here that you can't really see anymore. And then I'm adding again the darker lines with the shape that I see, final shape, and those are the ones I'm going to follow. Those darker lines. So I'll move into this stem. So we have more of the flower. Every time I move my head, it's going to be a little different, so I'm not too worried about getting it exact. It's kind of like drawing from a picture. There's a little bud right here. Just gonna simplify that bud. Not drawing too much of the edges. Not the best leaf, maybe I'll define that a little more later. To make sure it fits, I'm going to start with the flower itself. I can always shorten some other parts if needed. And let's see. Little ruffles. Getting real exact with this, of course, just like everything else, just adding in a representation of it from what I see. And I'm using that initial sketch as a base, but not a hard drawing, so I'm changing it where I think it needs to get changed now, paying attention to the details. If I miss some small details, that's fine too. Done with this. So I'm going to add just this forward facing leaf. And again, you have an oddly angled leaf, just think of it as separate shapes. One shape and then the other shape. And I'm going to add in this one more leaf because it's coming from that space. And it's kind of interesting with its crinkly edge here. It's a little bit red. And then I'm just going to add in the stem just for consistency. And I like this drawing the way it is. I think it includes all of the elements I want, and I'm going to leave this in the background as a shadow, but I'm not going to develop it into the picture. And it could be even interesting to add the other ones in. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, so I'm going to leave it just the way it is. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to adding some paint. first I'm going to add the orange to the flowers and to the bud. So these are the colors I used for my step-by-step. They're already mixed, so it's a lot easier just to revive some of these colors. And dab it on my towel, test it out on my test paper. I think it looks like the right color to me to start with. You can always get more, that's why I have my paints here. Dab it on my towel so I don't get too much water onto my paper. And just go ahead and fill in spaces, and I'm going to draw in the stigma, but I'm going to leave that, preserve that space a little bit. I forgot to add it in. That's okay. I'll draw it in later. And just remember it's there, so I'm leaving that a little bit white in the center there for that. A little bit of that peeking through. A little more paint. Add this to bud. And then to these flower petals as well. Well, it's still, but you can add a little bit more of that same color. Let's clean that brush out. I'm going to add this earthy green color. So I'll revive that with a little bit of water. Dab it on my towel and test it out on the paper. It's a little dark, so I'll add a little bit more water. Dab it, test it. Looks good. And I'm just going to add that to all of the leaves. So next I'm going to add in this red color. The most concentrated out of the driest, darkest. I'm going to get something that is not super light and not super dark, so it has a medium concentration of paint in it. Dab it off on my towel and check it out on my paper, and that looks pretty good to me. Add just a little bit more water because it was a bit grainy, and maybe add a little bit more of the color. It wasn't really flowing right. So it should feel pretty smooth when you're adding it to the paper. And add more water because now it's a little too dark once I added more paint. That looks right now, so it's not as dark as this. And I'll add that to the bud. And dabbing it off onto the towel to make sure you don't get too much paint on your paper, and if anything's still wet, everything's already dry. Just make sure you don't smudge it with your hand. So I'm starting here and moving up towards the petal edges, just because it's easier to preserve than that way. And it also adds kind of this rough texture look at the edge. After you've added all of that color, go ahead and move on to the next by cleaning your brush first. Sure, Get most of that color out. I use this bright green color. Test it out on my paper. It's good. It's a water lighter color. I'm just going to add that wherever I see a highlight in these leaves. So that's basically what it's doing, is adding. I want to leave some of this really light color, but also add a little bit of this brighter color. And you can kind of see that it has these bright green spots every once in a while in it. So that's basically what I'm adding, is just this bright green color. Next I'm going to add a little bit more this really dark concentrated orange down on my towel. It has enough on the brush. I can always pick up more. I'm just going to add it to the petal edges. And some parts are paler than others, so it's important to pay attention to that as well. Try to preserve those pale areas, so create more contrast and depth and make it more realistic and pop from your page. And if you just want to leave some areas a little darker, some areas a little lighter, that's fine. If you just want it to have consistent color, that's fine too. This is your painting. Now the leaves should be dry. They are, so I'll be able to add some darker bright green. So I'll add water to that to revive it. Kind of roll it, because I'm going to want a tip to line these leaves, and dab it off onto my towel. And I'm going to go ahead and wherever I see a shadow line, so darker areas, I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And let me just add it over the entire thing, just to make it super simple and fast. This particular leaf has a little thread at the end, and I'm not going to forget to add it to that little insect there. So I'm going to clean this off. I'm going to get that lighter red color, test it on my paper. It's good. And I'm going to add it to the insect. Add a little extra just so it pops a little more, and I'm going to add it to this leaf here on the edge. Almost forgot. I'm going to add a little bit to the stem too, because it starts to get a little bit red there, closer to the end. Clean out my brush, and now I'm going to go ahead and add this drier, darker red. So the more concentrated color, it still has some water added to it. Make sure it runs smoothly on your paper. Have it on your towel and test it out. Feels good. It feels like it's moving smoothly as well. Make sure not to put your hand in anything that's wet, and add that to the petals. And if at any point you need drier, more concentrated color, go ahead and mix it. I think this works for me though. That'll be dark enough. Edit this little insect to just the top of the insect, just a little bit darker. bottom is a little bigger. And there aren't any spots inside, which makes me kind of sad. Those were fun to put in. I'm picking up some more. And just, this kind of dry, but not really, but I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more to those spaces just to deepen it up because it is a lot darker. Some areas than the others, but for speed and time, I'm not gonna wait for it to dry completely before adding more, making it super dark. I think that works well enough. It's good representation. Maybe I'll go through and add one more layer in a minute. But first I'm going to go ahead and add one last color to the leaves. I'm going to take this earthier green. Dab it on my towel and test it out on my paper. Looks pretty good. I'm adding a little bit more water because it's still a little grainy. Didn't really want to run smoothly. That feels better. Still dark. Runs a little smoother. So I took more of the concentrated paint, added water to it. So it's the same, but runs better. And I'm just going to add that to the leaves in the dark areas, preserving these lighter areas in some spots where the light's hitting it. So once you have all of those colors added, you can add one more layer of the red like I'm going to do, just because you want to bring it just a little darker. You could also add a complementary color over it to darken it up. That also works. You can look at your color wheel to find out about that. But I don't want it quite that dark, and I don't want to work quite that much on it. I want to stick closer to what we did in our step-by-step. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this dark red color just to deepen it up, and you see that did a lot. But if you do add the complementary color, it can really darken this, or just in your palette mix the red with the complementary color. Now that I have all the colors I want added to this, I'm gonna go ahead and let it dry and move on to the ink lines. So first I'm gonna add in the 0055 micron lines. This is just kind of like that first initial sketch with the really light marks to give an idea of where things are supposed to go. So these are the initial lines to follow. And they're thin enough that if you need to change anything, you can after you've added it. And you can use this to redefine some of these lines. So depending on where your paint fell or how you ended up painting it, you can change it to work for you this time. for speed, so this video isn't too terribly long, I'm going to go ahead and move straight to the black micron 08. I'm just going to go through and just thicken some lines. So I think I like the way those lines look. I go ahead and add the scientific name, the common name. I think the best place for that is right here. And I'll write the common name with the 08 micron. Messy. And then use that 01 micron right now to add in the scientific name, which I did not write in italics, so I'm going to underline it instead. And now I'm done. You can add more paint or more ink if you want. Make sure to add some observations if you like, here in the white areas or anything. This is your sketch. If you like this video, make sure to click the like button, subscribe to this channel. Also check out naturesketchcrate.com for lesson crates. Great job observing your world and keep practicing.